And we are back here on First Bite talking Iowa draft picks the 2023 Detroit Lions draft, of course, with Tom Kakert of Hawkeye Report. We talked a lot about Sam Laporta, a lot of good stories and information about him, but let's move to the defensive side of the ball. First round draft pick, Ryan. We're finally on the first round here, talking Jack Campbell. Why don't you kick things off, Ryan? Because I'm eager to hear here.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the most interesting pick the Lions made, right? This was the one
Yeah.
pick that I think maybe threw everybody through a loop because it was a linebacker and it was a linebacker in the first round. But I'm really interested to get to know more about Captain Jack. So like again, like Sam, another 3-star recruit in the 2019 class. Um, how much fanfare did Jack arrive to Iowa with?
It wasn't like he was like this plum recruit. He's from Cedar Falls. Dad played at Northern Iowa. So it wasn't like he was this 5-star recruit that had a lot of fanfare. He was a multi-sport athlete, played basketball at Cedar Falls, and Kirk Ferentz always talks about going to see him play basketball. And he was, I know this will come as a surprise, but he was kind of a bruising forward at playing high school basketball. But just um, you know, the character side of Jack is the biggest selling point that I can tell you about him. And earlier we were talking about how I am convinced that Jack Campbell saved the Iowa football season. I don't. No one will ever be able to convince me otherwise because when you have an offense that was struggling as bad as Iowa was last year, the fingers start to point in the locker room at some point, and the defense, who is hellaciously good, um, stuffing everything and winning games 7-3, to open the season and doing everything they can, the fingers start pointing. And Jack was the leader of the defense, and Jack would have none of it. He would just basically say, "We just got to do a better job on defense, and we're not going to point fingers." And so nobody did because he was the most respected guy in the locker room, and everybody looked at him. And it wasn't like he was a menacing figure. It's just the way he carries himself is different. It's just he's humble to a fault, and kindness off the charts. And I'll share some stories with you guys about him and just the kindness that he shows people. But yeah, he's just a natural leader, but not a rah rah guy. He's not going to give a big speech and fire everybody up and you know carry the big torch out the door or anything. He leads by example, and you just know you're going to get a guy that's going to come in and work his tail off every day and be humble, and he loves football, and that's 100% why Dan Campbell drafted him, because he loves football.
Yeah, 100%. But I love the way you put that. How he saved Iowa season, and that very well maybe the title of this podcast. But so I understand like him saving it in terms of like keeping the locker room together. But you mentioned Iowa's hellacious defense. How much was that because of Jack Campbell, the football player, not necessarily just the motivator, the guy who the glue that keeps everyone together, but as the football player, how important was he to everything that I was able to do on defense?
Oh my gosh. Hey, let's just go to the Minnesota game, okay? That's the game Laporta's out. That just dents the entire um, offense. So they're driving to score and probably win the game. And their running back, Mo Ibrahim,
Another line.
had run, yeah, had run another line. You should ask him about the play that Campbell made sometime and see how he reacts to that. But he was running through them and had about 50 carries in the game. I can't remember it was over 40. Campbell just basically takes the ball, knocks the ball loose, and stops that drive. He intercepts a pass and ran it for a touchdown, but they said he stepped out, but he didn't. But Iowa scores anyway. gets points. But I mean, he literally put the team on his back to win that football game, and that's a huge, for Iowa. That is a giant game. That's their biggest trophy game, the Florida Rosedale, the Bronze Pig, and they had beaten Minnesota. I kind of think it's now 7 in a row. So Jack just put the team on his back and won the game, and of course takes zero credit for winning the game afterwards. That's who Jack Campbell is.
Well, some more to who Jack Campbell is as the football player. I know a lot of Lions fans are familiar with Kentley Platte, former Pride of Detroit guy, Math Bomb, who does his RAS scores 9.98, 6 out of 2,600 linebackers. So, like, one of the most athletic linebackers to ever test at the combine.
Mm-hmm.
Where and how does that show up on the football field on game day, Tom?
He's big, and I'm sure you guys have been around him. He's legit 6'4", 6'5", and just he goes sideline to sideline like nobody I've seen, and he just flies to the football pretty well, I think, and makes plays. Um, yeah, that's what jumps out to me when I've watched him play over his career is that he'd always just be flying to the football sideline to sideline, covering a lot of ground, and just has a nose for the football, and that's he's just a because I know there's a lot of places. I'll just like I look back at and you guys remember Aaron Campman, who played for Green Bay for many years. Is another former Iowa player. He was a middle linebacker like Campbell, but and he was bigger. He's 6'4", 6'5", and they ended up putting his hand on the ground, and they could have done that with Jack for sure, and he would have been a hell of a defensive end, but he just stayed at linebacker. And I remember his freshman year in camp talking to one of the coaches at Iowa, and he was like, "I think Jack Campbell is going to be pretty good." And I was like, "Really? That's interesting. Are you thinking about moving him down, put his hand on the ground?" No, no, no. He's different out there. He's going to be the next good one. And sure enough, he followed right after Josie Jewell and guys like that at middle linebacker for Iowa.
Is it true that there was some consideration to play him at center?
Oh, you know what Kirk said?
Hmm.
He said, if I could have 12 Jack Campbells, I would love that. That was his thing. And I'm sure I'm sure he said that at some point that he could have been a great center.
Yeah.
Because but yeah, I mean, Kirk's love affair with Jack Campbell is something that I've never seen. Jack Campbell could start talking about as he always calls him. He doesn't call him Kirk Ferentz. He called him Coach Kirk Ferentz, and he starts talking, waxing poetic about how much he appreciates that Iowa just offered him a scholarship to play football, and then Kirk, who's going to turn 68 in August 1st, the waterworks just get going. It's just he just starts weeping about they just have such a unique relationship, and that's the humility of Jack that comes across is, and it's genuine, that he is just grateful that the University of Iowa decided to offer him a scholarship to play football. And it's not like he's ever felt entitled about it. He feels like he's got to go out and earn that scholarship and earn the fact that they offered him a scholarship every single day on the practice field and on game day.
All right. Jeremy doesn't want to be the wet blanket, so I guess I'll do it. Tom, I got to ask you one question though, because there's a lot of trepidation with the Lions investing, a 18th overall pick in a linebacker.
Yeah.
Some of the knocks during the pre-draft process for Jack were kind of like that hesitancy to attack downhill or kind of play with suddenness. Maybe some of that athleticism that he tested out with at the combine doesn't always show up on tape.
Yeah.
Is that a fair criticism of his game? And did he show improvement in that area, over his time at Iowa, or do you think he has room to improve that at the next level?
Yeah, I think it's a fair criticism. I do. There's times where maybe he doesn't fly right into the line and those sorts of things. But I I just think he plays like an old school football player. He just does. He's very old school. It's not, and I think part of the issue is he's just so unique for an inside linebacker with his size, because most of the guys that are 6'5" like that, they're going outside. They're pass rush guys, or things like that. They're more outside. You don't see a lot of guys with his size uh, on the inside, and that's what I think makes him unique. And sometimes you can get, bigger guy can, it's an easier target, and you kind of get lost in the wash sometimes a little bit if you come too hard. So that's going to be something to watch. But the thing that I've always been impressed with him is that if there's a play on the sidelines, he gets out there, he flies out there and covers a lot of ground really quickly. um, Inside might be more of the challenge for him when they're playing between the tackles. That's probably where some of this shows up. But outside the tackles, he's terrific.
So old school linebacker Jeremy, is it any surprise that an organization that has Chris Spielman in it would want Jack Campbell
Right.
on his football team?
Exactly right.
He's a
Well,
lot like he's a lot like Chris. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good comp. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, and certainly he probably had an opinion on Jack Campbell in bringing him to Detroit. You mentioned that he's built like an edge, and I'm just kind of curious because I don't know, I have a sneaking suspicion that the Lions might use him this way. But was he sent on many blitzes in Iowa? Was that something that they ever kind of played around with, or was he more just kind of like that Mike linebacker, stay in the middle, play run defense and drop into coverage?
Yeah, they would send him. They didn't blitz a lot.
Yeah.
But they blitz more in the last couple of years, I think, than they have in the past. They've got kind of a package that they use. They call it the Raider package, where they'll kind of stand guys up at the line, and he might be on the right side one play, left side the next, and they try to create opportunities. He might look like he's coming, and then he's gonna fade back into coverage, into zone coverage and short zone. But yeah, he would come, and he was pretty effective at it, quite a bit. So he just, the thing that people don't realize is he's so big, and he just covers a lot of ground really quickly, and that's what makes him kind of unique, because of that size. Is, boy, he'd get right on a quarterback or a running back on the edge very quickly, just because it's like three strides and he's on the sideline.
I think we got to come back full circle to that, tease that we had in the first segment. I need to know more about Jack Campbell's response in that 9-6 football game. Like what was the deal with Jack after that game?
Well, that was where he basically said, "We're not gonna put up with, we got to do better. Defense has got to do better. We're not gonna blame the offense. That's not who we are. We're a team, um, and just let it be known to everyone and anyone out there that there were going to be no fingers that ever get pointed in that locker room, and he was going to make sure that that doesn't happen, and he would address it if it did happen. And he's not like mean spirited at all. It's just how he's built. He's just, the humility of this guy is off the charts. I'll share with you guys a great story. Here's a great Jack Campbell story that tells you everything you need to know about Jack Campbell, the person. So there's a guy that worked over at Kinnick Stadium, and the football complex is kind of like across the parking lot. And I think he's a little bit like disabled, and he was working over at Kinnick, and it was later at night, like 10 at night. There's really nobody around, and Jack was just leaving. He saw the guy and went over and talked to him, and he recognized him because that's where they come through on game days, and he'd see him. So he goes over to the guy and he says, asks him how he's doing, talk to him, and the guy mentions he's never been in the football complex. So at 10 at night, when Jack's got better things to do, probably, he takes this guy on a personal tour of the Iowa football complex and doesn't think anything about it. That's just who he is. I mean, that's Jack Campbell in a nutshell. He'll give you the shirt off his back. He's just one of the most grounded, kind people. If you have a daughter, you want Jack Campbell showing up at your door. That's the kind of guy you want. He's just can't say enough about the character of Jack Campbell, and he loves football. He just loves football. I mean, that's just, and you saw. I'm sure you guys have heard the story too. At the end of the Music City Bowl, he found out that his grandfather had died in an accident, got hit by a car down in Nashville, and he didn't know about that before the game, but he just handled that with so much grace and so much dignity. Afterwards, he didn't talk to us obviously after the game, but when he has spoken about it, it was just I know that there were friends of mine who were at the team hotel after the game, and you would think that Jack would be isolated. He was taking pictures with fans and interacting with them, and that just tells you that's Jack Campbell. I mean, he just in the face of a real tragedy for his family, he's still going to take time and take a few pictures with Iowa fans that were over there and be kind to them and sign an autograph or whatever. That's Jack. That's Jack Campbell in a nutshell.
That's an awesome story, and it's interesting because like at their base core, it seems like Sam Laporta and Jack Campbell have like very similar ideals, right? They're very good people and they're all about football, but like their personalities outward couldn't be more different, at least in my early experience, where like
100%.
Sam Laporta is this happy puppy running around, where Jack Campbell's like very focused, very like I don't know if serious is the right word, but is that kind of how you experience both players at Iowa?
Yeah, 100%. Where Sam is the guy that's going to go out and have a beer with you, kind of guy that'll have some fun and kind of be, I wouldn't say life of the party, but just he's going to joke around with you. Jack is just, it's all business, but he's just kind about it. He's just very humble and kind at all times, and grateful at the opportunities that he's had and in life. And but they're both just, they love football, and that's why Dan Campbell wanted them, I'm sure, is because they love football and they love playing football, and it's meaningful to them.
Right.
It's not just something they're doing to make money. They love the game and love to play the game, and there'll be a lot of Lion fans are going to have a lot of fun. I don't know if you guys know this. There's a T-shirt company in Iowa called Ray Gun.
Okay.
And they have a shirt out now because you guys have Matt Nelson too, from Iowa.
Yeah.
So they have a shirt now out that you can buy online that says Detroit Lions. So and it's become very popular, and it's in the Honolulu blue. Nice. and everything. So there's a lot of Iowa fans that have become Lions fans now. Just because of Jack Campbell and Sam Laporta.
Well, I got one more football one on Jack Campbell, and then if Ryan's got one, we can sneak one in, and then we'll let you go here. But it's about the intelligence of Jack Campbell, the football player, because obviously I think his road here in Detroit is going to be that Mike linebacker role with the green dot. Like, he is going to be given the keys to this defense at some point, whether it's this year, whether it's next year. He's going to be, quote unquote, the quarterback of the defense. So what is his experience in doing that at Iowa? And is he kind of the cerebral enough player where you think he can grasp that maybe earlier rather than later?
Yeah, he's a studying guy. He's I've talked to Seth Wallace, the Iowa linebackers coach, about that with respect to Jack, and he's like he just knows where he's supposed to be. He knows where everybody else is supposed to be, and he'll get them there. He's vocal. He's going to put people in the right place, and if he makes a mistake, he's going to learn from it quick, and then the mistake won't happen again. So he's not above making mistakes, but when he does, it's a quick learning process for him, and he's humble enough to admit that he has to learn things, and I think that's one of the things you guys will learn from Jack when you talk to him at media availabilities. Is he's the first one who's gonna, he's not gonna point fingers at anybody else. He's gonna say I have to do a better job, and I have to do this, or I have to do that. That's just how he is. He's never going to point at another teammate or the other side of the ball, and it's going to be about him getting better. And he works hard. He's just a terrific kid who works really hard.
The last thing I have to ask is kind of a fun story just from the pre-draft process. Kelvin Shepard had mentioned that another Iowa player, Lucas Van Ness, spent his entire interview with the Lions talking about Jack Campbell. Like, he talked more about Jack Campbell than he talked about himself. That surprising to you about
No.
Van Ness?
No, doesn't surprise me about anybody. I mean, I spent some time yesterday with Jay Higgins, who's going to be one of the starting linebackers this year, and all he talked about yesterday was everything he learned from Jack Campbell, just watching Jack Campbell operate for 3 years, and how he was kind of the guidepost or the guiding path to where he's at now as a leader on the team and trying to assume that role. And those are humongous shoes, and he knows that. But Jack he's a quiet leader. He's not one of those fire and brimstone. You're not going to see him do a Ray Lewis dance or anything like that. You're just not. But you're going to see him come out there, and he's going to put his hat on, and he's going to go to work. And that's how he carries himself. That's how he's carried himself since he arrived in Iowa City, and I'm sure that's how he's going to carry himself in Detroit.
Well, that's Tom Caker of Hawkeye Report. You can follow him at Hawkeye Report on Twitter. Tom, I'm going to give the floor to you here for a second just to promote yourself, promote maybe stuff that Lions fans will be interested in, or, I'm sure there might not be a lot of Lions fans in Iowa, but I think there are a lot of Iowa. I know of a lot of Iowa fans in Detroit. So why don't you share where they can find your stuff?
Yeah, we're part of the On3 network, and you can go to HawkeyeReport.com, and got a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, a lot of recruiting stuff, but we always invest in the NFL draft too, and talk a lot about that when that time of year comes along. So, would welcome anybody want to stop by and check us out. We got a lot of free content too, and you can check out my Twitter at Hawkeye Report, or just go to HawkeyeReport.com, and we'll be covering the NBA draft tonight.
There you go. Hopefully by the time people are listening to this on the podcast, the Pistons have done something exciting. But Tom, really, really do appreciate your time. All those stories that you shared with us, I think, gave us a really cool picture of these two guys, and I think Lions fans are going to be very excited going forward.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. Thank you all for listening. We will be back next week with an Alabama writer to talk about the 2 Alabama draft picks that the Lions made, just like the Iowa guy has a second round and a first round pick. But until then, thank you all for listening. I'm Jeremy. That's Ryan. Thanks again to Tom. We will be back soon. Until then, it's chaos. Be kind.